We are on DAF Nun Hey Amud Aleph in SUKKAH. We're getting close to the end. We're up to the third line in the Gemara, Meisvei. We are talking about a statement that was made on the previous DAF by Rabbi Acha bar Chanina Midaroma, actually Rabbi Acha bar Chanina, and from the south he had brought a brisa. And that brisa had basically said that when there are multiple korban musafs on one day, let's say Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos coincide, then you say multiple shears. You say a shear for each korban musaf, and the appropriate number of tekiyas for each shear. And recall that that the protocol was you divide each shear for its respective korban into three parts, and you blow during those three intervals tekiya, trua, tekiya. So you have 9 tekiyas, 9 sounds of the shofar for each shear. And Rabbi Acha bar Chanina had said that when there are multiple korban musafs, you have to double up. If you've got 2 musafs, you got to double up on the tekiyas, double up on the shear. So the Gemara is going to refute this. The Gemara is going to say, Meisvei, the Tani Rava bar Shmuel, Yachol Keshem Shetoken al Shabbos b'fnei atzmo ve'al Rosh Chodesh b'fnei atzmo, Kach yu token al kol musaf u'musaf. You might think that just like when you have a regular Shabbos by itself, you blow the shofar for the korban musaf for Shabbos, and when there's a Rosh Chodesh by itself, you blow the shofar for the korban musaf for Rosh Chodesh, and therefore if Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh coincide, you should blow for both. Tamul Omar uveroshei chodshechem. Now, therefore the pasuk tells me otherwise from the words uveroshei chodshechem. Where those words imply that, we'll see in just a minute. But the bottom line is that Rav Acha bar Chanina is being refuted. Tiyufta de Rabbi Acha tiyufta. Thank you so much. So is this a refutation of Rabbi Acha? The Gemara says, yes, this is a refutation. So the Gemara's question is, okay, just tell me, my Talmuda, where do you see from the words uveroshei chodshechem, where do you see this idea that you only blow shofar once for multiple musafs? Amar Abaye, Amar Kara, because the pasuk says uveroshei chodshechem. The Torah in that pasuk talks about multiple types of holy days. It says uviyom simchaschem, uvemoadechem, uveroshei chodshechem. That on the days of your rejoicing, and on the days of your Moadim, and on your Rosh Chodeshes. So from that word Roshei Chodshechem in the plural, Hukshu Kol Chadoshim Kulam Zelozeh, we see that all months are equally equated. So if on one Rosh Chodesh we're only going to blow the shofar once, for one set of blasts, so therefore every Rosh Chodesh, regardless of whether it coincides with Shabbos or not, we're always going to do the same consistent set of blasts. Rav Ashi Omar Ksiv Chodshechem Uchsiv Uveroshei. So Rav Ashi says, well, look at it this way. It says the word Chodshechem without the Yud, which implies 1 month. And then it says Roshei in the plural, which implies 2 heads. Ve'ezeh Chodesh yesh lo shnei roshim. Which month has 2 heads to it? Meaning has 2 holy day celebrations of the head of something. Hevei Omer ze Rosh Hashanah. So you have to say that that's Rosh Hashanah, which has both the musaf of Rosh Hashanah and the musaf of Rosh Chodesh. And the Torah says that it counts as one. It counts as one observance of the halacha of Tkiyah Shofar and Shir. So that's how you see from that pasuk. But the bottom line is that Rav Acha has been shown to be incorrect from this brisa. So okay, va'od Tanya, we have another brisa. It says b'cholo shel moed barishon ma hayu omrim. So this brisa is also going to refute Rabbi Acha. Now, this talks about the shear. On Chol HaMoed, the 6 days of Chol HaMoed Sukkos, there was a different shear each day. And the first day, what would they say? Havul Hashem b'nei Elim. That the famous kapitel Chavtes, which we say when we bring back the Sefer Torah on Shabbos, we say it Friday night. Give to Hashem, you princes, all of the glory and strength. The reason why we say this on the first day is because this is the beginning day of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. It's the time of great celebration, people coming out with great fanfare. So that's appropriate for that day. Give to Hashem great glory. Basheni Mahayu Omrim. What did they say on the second day? This is from Kapitel Nun. It says, "V'larasha Amar Elokim Malacha L'Saper Chukai V'Atisa V'Risi Alei Ficha." God says to the wicked person, "I don't need you to recite my praises." And essentially, what it's saying is to the people, guys, if you want to come to the Beis Hamikdash, fine. But if you're a Rasha, make sure you do tshuva. I don't want there to be excessive frivolity, and that the people who are not good people have come here without having done tshuva. Okay. Bashlishi mahayu omrim. On the third day, what did they say? Mi yakum li immereim. And before we get to that, we'll do baravi'i mahayu omrim. Binu bo arima ba'am. So on the third and fourth day, they actually broke up one kapitel. It's kapitel Tzadi Dalid, which we say the Shir Shel Yom for Wednesdays. And they broke it up into two halves. And on the third day, they said the latter half, the second half. And on Wednesday, not Wednesday, on the fourth day of Chol HaMoed, they said the first half. So Rashi is just disturbed. Why did they go backwards? So Rashi explains it's because, first of all, the idea of, let's take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi says, he says the latter half talks about the tsar, that the anguish and the distress that the Jewish people were under during Bayit Sheni, because they were under the domination of foreign governments, and as a result, it talks about Lulei Hashem Shahayali, that without God's help I wouldn't be able to endure. So that's what they said on the third day. On the fourth day, as you were getting close to the close of Yom Tov, so therefore the first part of that kapitel talks about the importance of giving your tithes to the poor. And we wanted to remind people before they went home to make sure that they tithe properly. So that's why we reversed the order. We wanted to save the first part, which talks about tithing, to push it towards the end of the Chol HaMoed, so that people would remember that when they go home, they have to give their proper tithes. B'chamishi mahayu omrim hasirosi mesevel shichmo. That this is, I believe, the Shir Shel Yom that we say on Thursdays. It's words of consolation. That even if you're going through pain, Hashem says, I will remove some of the burden from you, and I will answer you, and I will give you your rain, and because you've asked for water, I'll give you rain. And Bashishi, finally the sixth day of Chol HaMoed on Hoshana Rabbah, Mahayu Omrim, Yimotu Kol Mostei Aretz, which is, Rashi explains that this is the kapitel of Elokim Nitzav Ba'adas Kel, and it talks about Ani v'Rosh Hatzdiku, that you have an obligation to give tzedakah to the poor man and to the lowly person. So therefore, on this is again because we're sending people home to make sure that they tithe properly. That's what we're telling them to do. So the Gemara says, "V'imchal Shabbos be'echad mehem yimotu yidche." So if Shabbos, and this is the key phrase from this brisa, if Shabbos, that's only when all 6 days of Chol HaMoed are weekdays. But what if Shabbos coincides with one of them? So you only say one shir. You say the shir shel Shabbos, and you forego the shir of the Chol HaMoed day. And so the question is, so which one do you push off? You push off day 6. In other words, what you do is that basically whatever day Shabbos falls out, you say the shir shel Shabbos, and then you push all of the kapitelach off one day, so that you end up displacing the shir of the 6th day of Hoshana Rabbah, the 6th day of Chol HaMoed, Hoshana Rabbah. So basically what that proves to us is that Rabbi Acha was once again mistaken, because according to Rabbi Acha, you should say both shirs on the same day. But you see that we don't. You push off the shir that is displaced because of Shabbos. Now Rav Safra Manach B'hu Simna, Rav Safra created simanim. He created a way to remember the order of the kapitelach, which was Hum Bahi. Now Hum Bahi is like basically taking the first letter of each kapitel. Hey is Havu Lashem B'nei Elim, and Vav is Vela Rasha Amar Elokim, etc., etc. And Rav Papa Manach B'hu Simna Hum Habi, and he just changed the day 4 and day 5. He said that you're supposed to switch those. And v'simonech, and the way to remember who said what, is ambuha de safri. Ambuha de safri literally just means the alleyway of the malamed, of the teacher. Because typically parents used to bring their children to the malamed. They'd bring him to his home to learn. So you'd bring him to the alleyway, the ambuha, the mavui of the malamed. The word safri reminds us of the name Rav Safra. That's what his name was. And ambuhi sounds like his siman that he provided, which was humbahi. Okay. So anyway, Tiyufta de Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. Tiyufta, this again is a refutation of Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. So
for anything to remember was the Shraga that you switch depending on which day you.
It might have to. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. I don't know. If the Hoshanas. I think there are different cheshbonos for the Hoshanas than we have for the shir that they sang in the Beis Hamikdash, but it could be that they're related. Okay, anyway, the Gemara says, Rabbi Acha bar Chanina kara umasnisa ka'amar. The Gemara says, I don't understand. If you go back to what Rabbi Acha had said, he had demonstrated his contention from a brisa. The brisa had quoted a pasuk that talks about the sons of Aaron always blowing on the chatzotzros, which the brisa had said that teaches me lefi hamusafim tokim, that according to the karbans of musaf is the way they're supposed to blow, which implies that the brisa is saying that for each karban musaf you blow separately. So how are you going to, if we've refuted Rabbi Acha, what are you going to do with the brisa that he quoted? So Amar Ravina lomar shemarichin b'tikiyos. No, so Ravina says he didn't understand the brisa. The brisa, all the brisa is telling you is that you have to wait until the end of both musafs before you start blowing. Rabbi Acha thought that it means that you blow according to the musafs, means that you blow for each musaf separately. But that's not what the brisa means. The brisa means don't start blowing after the first karban musaf. Wait until the second karban musaf before you start blowing. And Rabbanan de Kesari Mishmei de Rabbi Acha Amri Lomar Shemar B'Betoken. And these rabbis of Kesari had said that all the Bryce is telling you is that you add trumpeters, you add more musicians. Normally you have only two guys blowing the trumpet during the Musaf. Now when you have multiple Korban Musafs, you add musicians, you add more music. But the amount of Tikiyos, the amount does not change. So that's the, right. Okay, fine. So now that the Gemara has talked about, this is an incidental to this whole discussion. We want to ask a practical question about what we do nowadays. Now we have no Beis HaMikdash. We observe 2 days of Yom Tov in the Gola, in the diaspora. So our question is, now that this Brisa has given us an indication that when Shabbos falls out on a day, you have to displace the shear of that day and push it off one day, and then you knock off the guy at the end. So let's ask a similar question. We have a dilemma. On the first day of Yontif, when we daven Musaf, we say, we'll offer you the Korban Musaf of the day of first day of Sukkot, Ka'amor, as it says in the Torah, right? Uvayom Harishon. On the first day of Sukkot, Shlosha Asar Parim, Elim Shenayim, right? 13 bulls, 2 rams, etc. On the second day, this, right? But on the first, what do you do on the second day Yontif? Second day Yontif, you have to treat like it's the first day Sukkot. Because if you treat it like the first day Chol HaMoed, then it's a bizayon to the Yontif. So you have to say exactly the same musaf that you said the first day Yontif, you have to say the second day Yontif. So you also have to say Uvayom Harishon. What are you going to do the next day, first day Chol HaMoed? You can't say Uvayom Hasheni because it's the third day of Sukkot. So you have that dilemma. Do you say Uvayom Hasheni? If you say Bayom Hasheni, so then you'll say the following day Bayom Hashlishi, but by the time you get to Hoshana Rabbah, you'll say Bayom Hashishi. What's going to happen to Bayom Hashavi? That'll get knocked out. On the other hand, if you start off with Bayom Hashlishi on the first day of Chol HaMoed, so fine, Hoshana Rabbah will end up as Bayom Hashavi in your Musaf davening, but then Yom Hasheni will get knocked out. So what are you supposed to do? So that's really the question. So Abaya Omar Sheni Yidoch. Abaya says you knock out day 2. First 2 days of Yantif you say Bayom Harishon. First day Chol HaMoed you say Bayom Hashlishi, and you just skip over day 2. Rava Omar Shavi Yidoch. And Rava says no, you can't do that. You got to knock out day 7, which means that on the first day Chol HaMoed you say Bayom Hasheni, and you keep on going until Hoshana Rabbah you say Bayom Hashishi. So Tanya Kavose de Rava, we have a brisa that supports Rava because it said in Chal Shabbos lios be'echad mehen yimotu yidcha. Because it says in the brisa previously that which shear gets knocked out when Shabbos overrides one of the shears of Chol HaMoed? It's the last shear, the shear of the last day. So you see that you knock out the shear of the last day, you knock out the recitation for the last day of Sukkot, which is Hoshana Rabbah. Fine. What's that?
That's why we combined them now.
Well, you'll see. Asken Amemer benahar da de medalge deluge. This is Amemer's takana. Amemer said, what you can do is as follows: combine them. So on the first day of Chol HaMoed, say Bayom Hasheni and Bayom Hashlishi. On the next day of Chol HaMoed, you say Bayom HaRevi'i, Bayom Hashlishi, and Bayom HaRevi'i. By the time you get to Hoshana Rabbah, you say Bayom Hashishi and Bayom Hashvi. So this lengthy Rashi at the bottom tells us that that's actually the practice not only for Musaf, but also for Kriyas HaTorah. For Kriyas HaTorah and Chol HaMoed Sukkos, the Revi'i is the main aliyah. The guy getting the fourth aliyah is the main aliyah because that's the added aliyah especially for Sukkos. So he has to read on the first day Chol HaMoed Bayom Hasheni and Bayom Hashlishi. That's his main reading. The first three aliyahs, Rashi says, first guy should say Bayom Hasheni, second aliyah says Bayom Hashlishi, and the third guy says a kriya that's germane to tomorrow. You don't really need him, but you just need to give him something extra for his aliyah. So you just give him the next little paragraph, which is Bayom HaRevi.
Doesn't medallic mean to let go? To
what?
Medallic doesn't it normally mean to skip?
Normally means to skip.
Doesn't seem to.
But over here, what it means is that you stagger it. That day one you say Sheni Shlishi, day two you say Shlishi Revi, right? So it's shifting over one. So next Mishnah. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Hayusham Yud Gimel Parim Elim Shanaim V'Soyer Echad. Okay, so let's just go over the math, okay? Let's go over the numbers. It's not difficult math. It's very simple, actually, but you just have to hold cup for a second. Remember, every day of Sukkot, there was one less bull. The first day of Sukkot, they offered 13 bulls, and then everything else was the same on every day: 2 rams, 1 goat, and 14 sheep. Okay, 14 sheep. Okay, and that's consistent every day. The only thing that changes is the bulls. First day, 13 bulls. Second day, 12 bulls. Third day, 11 bulls, until you get to the 7th day, there's 7 bulls. You add them all up, you get to 70, as we'll see that corresponds to the 70 nations of the world. Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. It's a lot of bull. Anyway, so the thing is that we also have this principle that there are 24 mishmaros. There are 24 shifts of Kohanim. And on Yontif, the shifts all work in unison. Every other time of the year, a shift works for a week, and no other Kohanim can do the avoda. On Yantif, since everyone's there, during the Shalosh Regalim, all the Kohanim show up, and all the Kohanim get to work. So you've got throngs of Kohanim. You've got 24 shifts of Kohanim that are present. How do you divide up the avoda among the 24 shifts? So the Gemara is basically just going to go through the math of how you divide up this amount of animals among 24 shifts. Okay? So Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag, so the first day of Sukkot, Hayusham Yud Gimel Parim, there are 13 bulls, Elim Shanaim V'So'ir Echad, 2 rams and 1 goat. Nishtay Rusham Yud Dalet Kivasim. So now you also have to realize that the bull is a much bigger animal than the sheep. If you're a Kohen, you want the more chashuva animal. You want to work with the bull. You don't want to work with the sheep. You want to work with the ram and a goat. Those are the gansa knackers. You don't want to work. A sheep is a kleina little animal, right? You don't want to work with the sheep. So they would give out, the more chashuva animals would be the bulls and the rams and the bull. So you got 16 of those. You got 13 bulls, you got 2 rams, you got 1 goat. So the first 16 mishmars out of the 24, they would immediately take those 16 animals. You got 8 shifts left, and you got 14 sheep. So how do you divide them up? So Lishmonim b'yom rishon shisha makrivin shnayim v'asha'ar echad. So on the first day, where you've got 8 shifts left of kohanim who are going to now divide up among 8 shifts, you got to divide up 14 sheep. So the first 6 out of the 8 do 2 sheep apiece. That's 12, and the remaining 2 mishmaros will do 1 sheep each. Basheni. Now let's go to day 2 of Sukkos. Now we've got only 12 bulls. So we've got 1 less animal of the Kanaker animals. We've only got 15 of the Kanakers, and but we've still got the same number of sheep. So chamisha makrivim shnayim v'hashar echad. So we've got 15. So that leaves us with 9 shifts left of kohanim who are not going to offer, who are going to divide up the sheep. So 9 shifts who are going to divide up 14 sheep. So the first 5 out of the 9 will offer 2 apiece. That's 10. We've got now 4 shifts that will offer 1 apiece. That's to get us to a total of 9, right? Bashlishi dalid makrivim shnayim v'hashar echad. On the third day, you have 4 out of the 8 shifts offering 2, and the remainder offer 1 apiece. That'll add up to 14 as well. Baravi'i shlosha makrivim shnayim v'hashar echad. On day 4, where you've got 7 shifts left, you've got the first 3 offering 2 apiece, which is going to add up to 6. And then the remainder will offer 1 apiece. Is that going to work out? Barvi, Shlosha Makrivim Shnayim. There through the first 3 shifts will offer 2 apiece, and the remainder will offer 1. The 4, 6. How many shifts of Kohanim? I lost count already.
6 full 8.
You'll have to have 8 shifts that are left. Right, because the number of shifts keeps increasing. So we've got, since on the 4th day, we've only got 10 animals of the Kanakers to offer, that leaves us with 14 shifts left. So the first 3 shifts will offer 2 apiece, that leaves 6, and the remaining 8 will offer 1 apiece. On the 5th day, so you've only got 9 big Kanaker animals. Is that right? No, you've got 11. Excuse me. You've got 11 big animals. You've got 13 shifts of Kohanim left. So Shnaim, the first 2 will offer 2 apiece, and the rest will offer 1 apiece. Bashishi echad makriv Shnaim ashar echad. On the 6th day of Sukkos, you've got now 10 animals left of the big animals. You've got 14 shifts of Kohanim. So then the first 1 will offer 2, and the rest will offer 1. No. Sorry. On this day, you've got 11 animals of the big ones. You've got 13 shifts that have to be distributed. So the 1 of the 13 will offer 2, and the other remaining 12 will offer 1 apiece. And Bashvi Kulan Shavim, and on the 7th day, Hoshana Rabbah, so you've got 14 shifts left of Kohanim who can't offer the big animals because there's only 10 of the big animals. You've got 7 bulls, 2 rams, and 1 goat. By the time you get to day 7, you've got 14 shifts of Kohanim remaining. And so therefore, those Kohanim offer 1 sheep apiece. Bashmini chazru l'fayis kibir galim. On Shmini Atzeres, where there's only a very small number of animals, par echad, ayil echad, right? 1 bull, 1 ram. So therefore, you have to do a lottery, because there's no way that you can divide up those animals among 24 shifts of Kohanim. Amru misha hikriv parim hayom lo yakriv l'macher l'chozrin chalila. And the rule was that if your shift offered a bull today, then tomorrow you'd be on the sheep list, and then you'd alternate every other day. You'd offer bulls, your Mishmar would offer bulls, and every other day you'd offer sheep. The Gemara now says, Nema masnisin Rebbe hivalo Rabbanan. Let us say that our Mishnah goes like Rebbe and not the Rabbanan. The Tanya par haba bashmini batchila mefisin alav divrei Rebbe. B'chachamim omrim echas mishtei mishmaros delo sholshu b'parim osa osa. So we have a machlokus in the Brisa as far as what was done on Shmini Atzeres. The Brisa says that according to Rebbe, they made a lottery among all 24 mishmaros as to who would do the avoda on Shmini Atzeres. However, the Chachamim disagree, and the Chachamim say that if you do the math, it's going to turn out that 22 out of the 24 mishmaros will have dealt with bulls 3 out of the days of Chol HaMoed. Out of Sukkos, right? At least three out of the 7 days of Sukkos, 22 out of the 24 mishmars will have dealt with bulls 3 times, except for 2 of the mishmars, which will only have dealt with the bull twice, with bulls twice. So it's according to the Chachamim. Therefore, you take only those 2 remaining mishmars who only could deal with the bulls twice, and one of those 2 will do the avoda on Shmini Atzeres as the consolation to them. And it seems like our Mishnah is saying that on Shmini Atzeres you did the lottery among all 24 shifts. So the Gemara says no. Afilu tema rabbanan atu shnei mishmaros lo afusei boy. So the Gemara says no. You could say that our Mishnah goes like the Chachamim as well, who say that you only distribute the Shmini Atzeres avoda to the 2 tribes who did not get to work with the bull 3 times. But still, they still have to take a lottery. Our Mishnah just says they take a lottery. It doesn't tell us how many of the Mishmars take a lottery. So our Mishnah could be like the Chachamim who say that the 2 remaining Mishmars have to take a lottery between the 2 of them. Which one of them is going to do the Avodah on Shmini Atzeres? So now the Gemara asks a question. Keman az lahadetanya kol ha-mishmaros shanos u'mishalshos chutz mishmei mishmaros sheshanos ve'ein mishalshos. According to whom does our Mishnah go? Does the following brisa go? It says all of the mishmars over the course of Yantiv either work with the bull. They work with the bull 2 times and even 3 times, except for 2 out of the 24 mishmars who only work 2 times with the bulls but do not work 3 times. Name a Rebbe velo Rabbana. That seems to go like Rebbe, because Rebbe says that just because you work 3 times with the bull doesn't mean you automatically get only 2 times with the bull on Sukkot doesn't entitle you to get special treatment on Shmini Atzeres. We do a lottery with all 24 on Shmini Atzeres, and that's why the Brisa seems to be saying that regardless of whether you did it 2 or 3 times, you're not going to get to work for a 3rd time on Shmini Atzeres. So the Gemara says no. Afilu tema rabbanan man lo shalshu b'pari achag. So no, this Brisa is telling me according to the Chachamim. You could say it's going according to the Chachamim, and the Brisa is not dealing at all with Shmini Atzeres. It's not telling you who gets to work on Shmini Atzeres and who doesn't. It's just telling you how many times did you get to work with bulls over the 7 days of Sukkot. Shmini Atzeres is not even on the table in this Brisa. So frek the Gemara umay kamashmal. So what are you telling me? What are you telling me that I don't already know? Do the math. You'll see that some people got to go with the bulls 3 times, and some only got to do 2 times. So what do you need to tell me that in the Brisa? It's telling you that you had to take turns. No mishmar could work 2 days in a row with the bulls. You had to switch over and you had to alternate. So if your mishmar worked with the bulls today, you had to give now another mishmar the chance to work with the bulls, and you work with the sheep. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Hani Shivim Parm Keneged Mi. So to whom do these 70 bulls correspond? Keneged Shivim Umos, they correspond to the 70 nations of the world, and that we offer bulls on their behalf as an atonement for their sin. Par Yechidi Lama. What about the one bull that is brought on Shmini Atzeres? Keneged Uma Yechidi. That corresponds to the nation of Israel. That we offer a special bull to show the unique relationship between God and Israel that is different from the 70 nations. Mashal Melech Basar V'Dam, and Rashi quotes the Midrashic text of this, which is very similar to our Gemara. It can be compared to a mortal king. Sha'amar la'avad avasuli su'uda gedola. He tells his servants, make for me a very large feast. L'yom acharon amar le'ohavo aseli suda kedana kedei she'en emimecha. On the last day of the festivities, he tells his closest friend, you know what, let's just you and I have a meal together, so that I can have special time with you. Right? So that's what Shmini Atzeres is all about. Right? So that's the famous Rashi is quoted in the quotes in Chumash. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, oy lehem la'ovdei kochavim sha'avdu ve'en yodim ma sha'avdu. And actually some have the girsa she'ibdu, that woe to the nations who have lost the temple and don't even realize what they've lost. The other girsa is she'ibdu, they've destroyed and they don't even know what they've destroyed. Bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim mizbeach mechaper alein va'achshav mi mechaper alein. When there was an altar and we offered karbanos on behalf of the umos ha'olam, of the other nations, they could receive atonement. But now that there's no mizbeach, who's going to atone for them? The Medrash Tanchuma says a similar idea. It says if the Romans would know how powerful and beneficial the Beis HaMikdash is to them, they would have appointed guards 24/7 around the Beis HaMikdash to protect it. But not only did they not protect it, but they actively destroyed it. And this is a good metaphor for Klal Yisrael. If the nations of the world would know how important Klal Yisrael is to the world, they would be sending us, like the United States does, fortunately, they'd be sending us billions of dollars to help secure us. But instead, what do? They heap derision and scorn upon us. They try to drive us out of the land, and they try to do all the things to us to undermine the Jewish people. Right? So that nothing has changed.
The Medrash says kasher like predasim, right?
That's right. That's a similar medrash, but the Rashi also quotes this same language of I don't know if it's not the same language of the Gemara. You'll take a look in Rashi on Chumash, but it says small seuda between you and me that we can have together. Mishnah says bishlosha prakim bashana hayukol mishmaro shavos be'emorei haregolim. There were 3 times a year, meaning the shalosh regalim, when all of the mishmaros, the 24 mishmaros, shared equally in the service, in the avoda. And the language that the Mishnah uses is a little bit bizarre because it says be'emorei haregalim, in the innards of the intestines of the regalim. We'll have to explain what that means. U'v'chiluk lechem haponim. Plus, they also divided equally the showbread. Normally, the showbread is divided up on Shabbos and it's given to the mishmar that's on duty. But if that Shabbos coincides with the Yontif, then all the mishmaros get a piece. And ba'atzeres omer lo helech matzah helech chametz. And on Shavuos, when you have all the mishmaros present, if Shavuos coincides with Shabbos, and then there's 2 types of bread that are divided up. One is the lechem haponim, the weekly showbread, and the other one is the shtei halechem, the 2 loaves of bread that were waved over the altar that were made out of chametz. And in order to distinguish between the 2, each Kohen would stand in line, getting the weight their distribution, and they would the guy giving it out would say, take a piece of matzah and take a piece of chametz, because right, one of them was the showbread was non-chametz, it was made out of unleavened bread, and the shtei halechem was a unique type of mincha that it was made out of chametz, and we would give him so take a piece of matzah, take a piece of chametz. Mishmar shizmano kavua, hu makriv temidim nedarmu nedavos u'sha'ar karbanos tzibor u'makriv es hakol. But the Mishnah qualifies that statement that we just made, that all of the mishmaros share the avoda equally. That's only vis-a-vis the avoda that is germane to the Yom Tov. But there's other avoda that has to be done on a daily basis. Let's say the korban tamid and personal karbanos that people bring to the Beis HaMikdash. That type of avoda is done only by the mishmar whose turn it is for that week, and they therefore get to share the benefits of those animal sacrifices. They get the meat and the hide of those karbanos. But when it comes to community karbanos for Yontif, so that's shared equally by all 24 mishmaros. So the Gemara first asks, Emori haregolim shel gavoaninu. How can you tell me that the intestines of the karbanos of the Yom Tov are distributed to all 24 mishmaros? They don't get distributed; they're burnt on the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chizda Masha Amor Birigolim. The word Emorei in the Mishnah does not mean the intestines of, but it means from the word Lemor, Omer. It's that which is said about the karbanos of the Yom Tov that is divided among the Kohan. What the Torah says about those karbanos, that the Kohanim get to share in it, it's given to all 24. Tanu Rabbanan, the Brisa says, Minayin shekol hamishmaro shavos be'emori haregolim. So the Gemara asks the question, how do you know that all the mishmaros are equal when it comes to dividing up the karbanos? Tamulomar, uba b'chol avas nafsho v'sheres. So you have to look at the pasuk for just a second. The Torah says, "V'chiyavo halevi me'achad she'arecha mikol Yisrael." When a Levi comes, just referring to a Kohen, if he comes from any of your cities in Eretz Yisrael, asher hu garshem, where he lives, uba b'chol avas nafsho l'makom asher yibchar Hashem, and he comes with the desire of his heart to the place which Hashem will choose, which is he comes to Yerushalayim to do the avoda. V'shereis b'shem Hashem elokav k'chol achav halaviyim hamdim sham lifnei Hashem. He shall serve equally with all of his brethren, the Kohanim. So that pasuk seems to imply that any time a Kohen steps forward and says, "I volunteer to work," you got to give him a job, and he gets to divide equally among the work. So that's where we see that during the regalim, he gets to divide up equally and does the equal amount of work, regardless of which mishmar he comes from. You might think that that's true on any day of the year, not just on the Yom Tov. So therefore, the beginning of the pasuk says he comes from achad she'arecha, from one of your gates. And the way we learn it is, it's not that just that the Kohen is coming from one of your gates, but he's coming at a time when all of Klal Yisrael are gathering in one gate, which means when everyone makes Aliyah L'Regel, that's when this halacha applies. It's a brilliant exposition on this pasuk. You look at the pasuk in the Pashup shot, and it seems like there's complete anarchy and chaos. A Kohen says, I want to do the avoda. So, you got to listen to him. No, it's not. The Torah Shabbal Peh tells you that this pasuk only applies in certain intervals of the year. During the Shalosh Regalim, when all of Klal Yisrael are in one sha'ar, are in one gate, that's when a guy says, you got to give me the job, right? But any other time of the year, there has to be order. There has to be taking turns. There has to be shifts. Okay. And then finally, uvechiluk lechem hapanim, they divide equally the lechem hapanim. So the question you could ask is, if the Mishnah told us that they only divide the unique Yom Tov Avoda equally, well, the lechem hapanim is not unique Yom Tov Avoda, it's the weekly Avoda. So why should all 24 shifts get it? Shouldn't only the Mishmar of that week get it? So let's explain. Tanu Rabbanan, minayin shekol ha-mishmar shavos bechiluk lechem hapanim. How do you know that all of the shifts share equally in the lechem hapanim? Talmud Omar, chelek kechelek yochelu. The Torah, the very next pasuk that we just, from that verse, those verses that we just quoted, says, each one shall get an equal portion, levad mimkarav al ha'avos, except for that which was previously traded or arranged by their ancestors. So what does that pasuk mean? Kechelek avoda kachelek achila, that whoever works, the same way that they distribute equally the work, so too do they distribute equally the food, meaning the food from the avoda. Umay achila, so what food are you talking about? Ilema karbanos, if you're going to tell me that they divide equally the sacrificial meat that they've been working on, mehasam nafka. We have another pasuk, la kohena makriv osa lo siya. We already have a pasuk that says, whoever's doing the avoda gets to eat. So you don't need that pasuk to tell you that issue. Ella lechem hapanim. So therefore the pasuk is coming to tell me that there is a type of food that the Kohanim divide up that is not the product of their avoda. The only food that the Kohanim eat that is on any given day in the Beis HaMikdash that is not their product of their avoda of that day is the lechem hapanim, because the lechem hapanim is baked 9 days before they divide it up on Shabbos. So therefore, the pasuk must be referring to the lechem hapanim. It's a special gzeras hakasav that even though it's not yontif related, all 24 shifts get divided equally when it coincides with yontif. Yochel af bechavos habo shalom machmas haregel beregel. So you might think that all sacrificial foods are divided equally on the regel among the 24 shifts. Talmud Omar, levad mimkarav al ha'avos, except for that which was previously arranged by their ancestors. So what does that phrase mean? Ma machru ha'avos zelazeh, ani b'shabosi va'ato b'shaboscha. What did our ancestors already prearrange in advance to exchange with each other? Which is what the pasuk is saying does not get divided equally. The shifts. The Kohanim had arranged previously, your family takes a shift 1 week, my family will take a shift another week. So those shifts, having to do with the daily karbanos on particular days of the year, those are not distributed equally. Those are distributed among the mishmaros, among the different shifts of Kohanim. You all have a wonderful day.